Good afternoon, everybody. That just sounds weird, so I'm going to say it again. Good morning. I like good morning better. It's got more energy. It doesn't seem as formal, and it makes people smile. Like yesterday, I went and I voted, and I was walking out of the voting booth at like 6 o'clock, and I was passing people, and I was like, good morning, and they just kind of look at me, and they smile like, good morning. It's just, you know, it's something a little bit different, puts people not on edge, but makes them think for a little bit, makes them smile. Yeah, listen, I'm different. I'm weird. It's fine. I get it. But welcome back to the Manufacturing Alliance podcast. As always, I'm your host, Tony Demakis with Alliance Specialties in Laser Sales, where we are the mold makers that don't build molds. We do all the things that mold makers want to have done that don't have the time to really do, and now the resources to do them. So whether you're looking for polishing, laser welding, laser engraving, hot runner repair, preventative mold maintenance, we have a staff of people here ready to do that. And that's all we specialize in. So we don't want to build the molds. We know that that's your job. We don't want to start getting in the way of that. We don't want to compete with you. All we want to do is help you fix your stuff and get it back to you as quick as possible. The other thing that we do is we have a full line of laser welding and laser engraving equipment made here in the United States, in Prairie Grove to be specific. It is at our Laser Development Center, and we build everything there, and it's awesome. The newest machine that we've built utilizes a universal robot to do the welding, so it can do production welding, it can do manual welding. It's an awesome feat of engineering, and our team does a great job. So if you are in the market at all for any of that, let us know. You can reach out to me at tony@alliancelasersales.com, or you can go to alliancelasersales.com just as the website, and you can find all the information there. As always, this is a live show, and so what we want to do is we want to hear from you, the listener, the viewer. If you're watching, if you're listening, you can always go back and listen to it later, and that's fine, and still comment and let us know what you thought. But if you're watching now live, we want you to be part of the conversation. So whether it's Facebook, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's YouTube, go ahead and put your name and your company in the chat, and we will be happy and honored to answer your questions and just give you a shout out, because it's easy. It's easy. We're just going to say the name, your name and the company name, and people are going to hear it and they're going to go, what is that? I wonder. I should look them up. Maybe something comes of it. I don't know. But if you don't do it, you don't know. So there's that. And then we have our golf outing coming up September 23rd. Registration is being finalized right now. We're hoping to have an amazing time like we did last year and really just totally blow it out. Again, proceeds are going to go to our friends at iWarriors. You know, the people that give iPads to combat wounded veterans to help with PTSD, to help them communicate with their loved ones when they're in the hospital, and they're doing all those things that we tend to forget about when we're here stateside, comfy, cozy, working with our families. So consider joining us for those events. And yeah, that's it for our introduction. And we've got a good, awesome guest on today. He is super knowledgeable in all things when it comes to plastics. He should be. It's his job. He works for Plastics News, and he's a listener of the show, which made me really excited because it means people are watching, and that's a good thing. So, Don, come on down. Welcome to our show, my friend.
Hey, Tony. First time caller, long time listener, right?
Yeah, it's great. It's great. And you know, I appreciate the support. You're a guy who's been around for a little while. I'm sure that's not offensive to you. You're a seasoned veteran in the industry. And when you were telling me at the Detroit show that you watch and you listen to our show, I was honestly, I was a little bit blown away, and I was flattered. So thank you for doing that. And Lorena is on with us from Progressive, and she's looking forward to the conversation with you. So awesome. Lorena is always listening. She's like the most loyal, dedicated person ever. Either that or she's bored. One of those two things are reality.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, so I've been with Plastics News since 1991. So you're right, I have been in the industry for a long time. And so I do have some historical perspective on some of the issues. But, you know, you asked as we were preparing sort of, you know, what's hot. And that changes from day to day and from week to week, you know, the news stories. There's always something interesting going on. So I think when we first started, people wondered how we were going to fill a newspaper every week, but we've never had a problem doing that.
It's amazing. And Plastics News is every week, yeah?
Yeah, it's actually 3 times a month now, so
Okay.
so I've reduced the frequency just a little bit to save on postage and postage and paper this year.
Yeah.
But I'd rather go back to 52 times. That's my preference. But I know a lot of our audience gets the news from the website now, so
Right.
it's not quite as important to come
Well,
out.
that's what I was going to say. Things just keep flying now, right? So if it's once a month publication, by the time you get it, if it's news, right? If it's just articles and little tidbits and tips and tricks, then you can get that once a month. But if it's actually news, it comes at you so quickly now that if you wait 3 weeks, it's no longer news. Someone's going to find it somewhere else.
Yeah, I remember when we first started the website, people, like the machinery suppliers, would say they kind of noticed that, hey, they'll put a story about a company that's planning to expand on their website before it appears in print. So they were jumping on those, like, hey, did you hear about this company? They said they're going to buy new machines. Give them a call today and try to beat the competition. So that's the pace that everything goes on now.
Yeah, and it just keeps getting faster and faster and faster. We started working with a company on our website where we can see, and I'm sure you guys have something similar, you can see exactly when they went on your site, what they looked at. You don't get to see the people because that would be spying, and that's bad. But you can see the company and the IP address that it came from. So it gives you an ability to reach out immediately and say, hey, I saw that you were on our site, looking at X, Y, and Z. Do you know who that might be and who I could talk to? And it just gives you a little edge on the competition. So, I mean, it's been good, but that's just how fast things continue to move.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. No, we don't have anything like that. We get a lot of analytics from the site, though, so we know what's popular with readers and how long they're spending on stories and things like that.
Yeah, it's good stuff. So you've been a journalist for quite some time, yeah?
That's right, yeah. Since 1983, that's when I graduated from college. I worked for daily newspapers in Wisconsin and Virginia before I joined Plastics News.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So plastics for a long time.
It's been plastics for a long time. Yeah, I didn't expect that when I first joined, but it was we're part of Crain Communications. Crain's a good employer. It was, it's been a good opportunity. It's an interesting market. It's business journalism. It's very similar to what I was doing before, but just for a specialized audience, where we don't have to explain what injection molding is in every story we do about an injection molder.
Right.
So, at first couple of months, going back to the very beginning, I remember thinking like, polypropylene, polyethylene, what are these materials? What are they used for? And just kind of stressing out. And then after a while, you learn it all. And one thing that I tell the new reporters all the time is, when you're talking to somebody in the industry, most people, almost everybody, is just really happy if you ask them questions, and they're happy to share information with you, because nobody else cares about what they do. So this is a chance for them to educate you. Like, this is what my company does. This is how the process works. This is what the material is. And people are excited about it.
Yeah, and what I found in talking with people is nobody, or a lot of people don't feel like they have much to contribute or talk about on their own, because it's just what they do. It's just their career. It's their job. It's what they do. But to people on the outside, they have no idea how this stuff is made, and a lot of times they're fascinated by it. They come in here and they're like, "Oh, that's what goes into a pen? That's insane!" Or a bucket, or whatever that is. Something simple. Nobody really gets it, and so when you're talking to a mold maker or whoever, they just know the information. It's hard for them to share it unless you can ask those questions and dig some of that information out of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
So it's a very good thing. I mean, when I came back to the company from when I wasn't here, so when I came on board, I wasn't sure that I was going to like it because it's a different thing. I mean, I was graphic design and marketing, and that's what I started doing here. And it was just one of those things where I lost an appreciation for what my father started, and now being able to have that resurgence and love it all again, the plastics and the whole industry. It's been great, and all the people in this industry are great.
And coming into it with the background that you have, I'm sure that you see that a lot of plastics companies don't do those things very well. You go to their websites and it's like, oh, this was designed in 1995.
Right.
It hasn't really been updated.
It's their first website ever.
Yeah, or maybe they just don't know, what people are actually interested in. What, who's the audience you're trying to reach, and what are you trying to tell them?
Right.
And it's kind of, hey, if this is aimed at bringing in young workers to your company, is the message that you have on your website, is that doing that? And, a lot of cases, it's not. They're just going to look at it and they're going to be bored right away.
So are you, again, you've been in I think this is going to be like a good, what we can look at is like maybe a history lesson, and then looking into the future, the past, present, and future of what's in plastic. Maybe we can look at it kind of like that. And what you're seeing, are you seeing a change in companies? Are you seeing more companies that didn't in the beginning find an emphasis on marketing or websites or communicating properly to the customer because they were just getting work? My father will talk about it. When he started the business, there were mold shops on every corner. He would leave in the morning with his truck. He would go pick up all the work. He would come back to the shop, give it to his partner to work on polishing, and then the next day they would go back out, drop off stuff, pick up more stuff, and that's just how it worked. You didn't really need to market and look for companies because there was so much manufacturing right at your fingertips. Are you noticing that that's changed? Are you seeing more companies having to put forth some effort on that?
Yeah, more are definitely. There are more. In so many cases though, like a company, like the sales and marketing are combined, and sometimes the person, if it's one role that's handling both, sometimes that person is better at sales than at marketing, or,
Sure.
or vice versa. And it can be hard to wear those two hats. There are some marketing firms in plastics I'm sure
Yep.
that you're aware of. Some of those companies they've got that specialty, and I think that they do a good job as well, and give good tips to their clients. Yeah, I don't know if you've ever had any of those people on the podcast. Maybe you have.
We've got one coming up.
Oh, okay.
Is he in August? Yeah, we've got one coming up in August. So that'll be good. He's at a lot of the different industry events and things like that. So that'll be a good show. I'm interested in that because I want to know who's actually putting stuff out there. We sit on these marketing roundtables and people want to know how to grow business and what that looks like, and you give them suggestions. They're like, well, I don't know if we need a full-time marketing person. Well, then it's not going to change.
Yeah, and I don't know if most companies do too, but I think they need to have somebody who knows something about it or who has a strategy, and then to pursue that strategy correctly. I have to think about small companies who do it well. I'm sure I can think about it if I give it some thought. But yeah,
There's more and more of them that are pushing forward with it. They're starting to realize that they need to have some brand exposure, and it's not just going to show up on its own.
Right. Yeah. Sort of the typical thing that we get is a company will send me an email and say, "Hey, I saw that you mentioned our company in your story. Can you add a link to our website?" And it's like, so that I think that they think that's what marketing is, and it's like, no, I understand why you want that, but that's not what we really do news stories for. So
right. And if they were savvy about it, then they could take that article that you posted and they can go crazy with it on social media and put it out there, and it's going to do more work than you just adding a link to their website.
Absolutely. Right.
I digress. So what has been the biggest change that you've seen in plastics from when you came into the industry to where we are today?
I get over that time frame, I'd say the globalization has been the biggest change. I think at the beginning, in the early 90s, we really didn't have a lot of stories about what was going on in China, competition. It didn't really exist. And I looked up recently, some of our early coverage, and I think it was NPE in 1997 that Hi-10 came for the first time. Here's the first time that what's now a global major injection molding machinery maker came to NPE, which is the global U.S. show, and they came and they that part of their marketing push then was, if you buy a press from us, we'll give you a free vacation to China and come and tour our plant and have a week's vacation and tour the area. And I thought, like, boy, talk about change now. I mean, globalization has changed so many sectors of the industry, and then now it's maybe coming in the other direction with reshoring becoming more of a real thing, all the supply chain issues, But I think, but that's something that's probably been the biggest change. There have been a lot of different things. Mergers and acquisitions, the rise of private equity buyers in the plastics industry, that's really changed.
That one's
a lot of markets,
crazy.
A lot. And again, if you go back to, one was our first time that we wrote about a private equity company coming into plastics. It was probably the late 90s, and now it's like every day, right?
Right. Well, what I think Westfall kind of kicked off that resurgence, right? When they just started buying everybody.
Yeah, there's been sort of a series of companies like that. Not I don't know that Westfall. I mean, they kind of applies to them, but there's been other companies, sort of the big acquirers,
sure.
Like Sigma Plastics and Film, Tyco for a while. They were acquiring like every company that they could get their hands on. Some of the blow molding is consolidated a lot, and you look at sort of, sometimes I have to think about, well, who owns the Owens, Illinois blow molding assets that still all exist, but they don't own, that type of thing. You have to go like, who bought them and when, and how many times have they changed hands? There's been consolidation, although, plastics, I think, there's always new companies coming in, maybe not a lot recently, but the barrier to entry is not huge. Anybody can start an injection molding company or tooling company. Tooling is harder because of the cost of the equipment if you really want to be cutting edge.
Yep.
You've got to invest in some very expensive equipment. Sometimes I wonder, like, why do people get into the tooling business? Look at the cost of capital to do that. Like, it's insane.
Yeah, it is, and I don't know that there's many that are going to be starting. Right? I think a lot of them, they're just continuing to grow. I don't think you see many new mold builders popping up. It's just who's gonna live it out the longest? Who's gonna play the infinite game and just survive?
And that's been a sector where we have seen M&A activity, where we hadn't for a long time. I mean, it's kind of been the last to start to see companies, acquiring other mold makers and becoming national or even global, having plants all over the place.
Yep. So with the reshoring initiative, we talk about this sometimes. It seems like it's the last few years it's been up and down, right? Like COVID came and everybody said we got to bring everything back home. We have to do this, and then we don't buy anything in China because we don't have to. We don't build molds. We don't supply molds. We repair them. But what it seems like it seems like it got to the point where everything was coming back, and then there was a small push where people kind of stopped and went, "Wait, remember when we got this cheaper? Why don't we do that again?"
Yeah.
And then it went back to China for a hot minute, and then China shut down again, and now it's coming back again. Do you think that this is going to be sustained for a little while, or do you think people have a very short memory? They're like goldfish, and it'll be a year, and then they'll go back to it, and then we'll have something else? And what's your thought?
That's a good question. Like goldfish is a good description as well. I think that companies are going to be strategic about what they reshore and what they continue to consider for China or elsewhere. If it's something that is time critical, then they're going to look at North American suppliers. Yeah. If it's something that it's cost, then they might look at Mexico or China. But I do feel that this is something I'm sure that your viewers deal with all the time. I think that some of the buyers at their customers maybe don't know as much about the sectors that they're buying in as your viewers do. So there's turnover in the acquisition teams at the OEMs and people and things like that, and you probably have to educate a new person all the time in terms of like, this is why you should continue to do business with us. Hey, here's a lesson that your predecessor learned, and maybe you don't know, but they got in trouble because because of this situation that happened. And that's how we got your business to begin with,
Right.
because we came in and saved the day. So that happens all the time, right?
Yeah, and I'm hoping that this stays a little bit sustained, and I do think that. So having talked to different people, we went down to Mexico a couple years ago for Plastamogen and the Mexamold. I think Mexamold was the show, and some of the other ones. And Mexico seems like it's the new China. I mean, it's the next hotbed of outsourcing tooling.
Yeah, in a lot of ways it is. But hey, look at a couple of weeks ago, Lego announced that they're building a plant in Virginia.
Yeah.
So I don't think that the trend is over yet. I mean, here's a company that, whether it's tariffs or supply chain issues or the fact that they can automate the heck out of a plant and make it competitive with their plants globally, they think that they can, invest that amount of money to do, a big injection molding plant in the U.S. That's good news.
Yeah, and if you work at Lego, listen. Don't spend too much time trying to build a tool room to do maintenance. We'll do it. You don't have to hire any polishers. They're really hard to find. Sometimes they can be finicky. We got great guys. We will be happy to do that for you. So you can just focus on building blocks, and we'll do all the repair and maintenance for you. Promise, we won't let you down.
Yeah, and if they want to track ABS pricing, they should follow Plastics News.
Absolutely. See, that's what this is for. This is just like encouraging. And I listen. I don't think anybody from Lego is listening, but if they are, great. That would be amazing. I think that was one of the stories that I saw that I thought was really, really cool when I saw how many people they were looking to employ and what that looked like for the country and for employment rates and just getting people involved in an industry where for a while it looked like it was dying because everybody made a push to go to college and there was less of an emphasis on getting hands dirty kind of jobs. So it was really cool to see that Lego is coming back to the United States or coming to the United States.
Yeah, and I think when you had Frank Esposito on, he talked about resin supply and demand and what's going on in North America and the fact that there's new capacity coming on here, which you never would have imagined 20 years ago that anybody would be building new resin capacity in North America. People thought it was all going to be in the Middle East, and then low-cost feedstocks are here. So you've got the shell plants going to open this year. You've got all the investment on the Gulf Coast. So yeah, the plastics industry has been growing in North America, and I think it's going to continue to grow. We had Bill Wood, who was our economist. He wrote a column that even this year with all the inflation and supply chain issues and worry about a potential recession, he's still predicting that the plastics industry is going to report growth in 2022, and it's going to be faster than the economy as a whole.
Sure.
So, which is kind of back to what people in the plastics industry are used to, is growing faster than the economy, faster than GDP, rather than just kind of keeping up with GDP.
I don't see anything. I don't see plastic slowing down. Plastic products are not, going away. You still walk through Target or Walmart or whatever store you go to. A majority of the things are made in plastic.
Yeah, there's definitely going to be changes when it comes to single-use plastics, and I think there's also going to be changes in terms of what the materials that people are using. I was at the K Show had a media preview last week in Germany, and I went to that, and I was really surprised by how much all of the companies, and this includes materials and machinery, were talking about carbon footprint and the efforts that they're making to improve their carbon footprint. I thought that was, it's really notable. I think there's going to be a lot of demand for green energy, green materials, whether that's recycled materials or materials made from non-fossil fuel-based feedstocks. That's coming, and I think it's going to be coming really rapidly, probably in Europe faster than here. But I've been talking to people for a while, and I felt like the fact that there was no NPE last year, I think kind of puts the North American audience behind in understanding where these issues are and how pressing that they are. For anybody, if you go to the K Show in 2019 and you saw how circularity was the big trend. Every company had something. I mean, in surprising places, I would go to a company and think they're not going to talk about circularity, and then they did. Everybody had some message about that, and I think it's going to be even more so this year. It's going to be circularity, and it's going to be carbon footprint. People are going to talk about what pledges that they're making to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions, and I think that sort of the missing that NPE cycle here means a lot of the North American audience will not have heard any of this, and they won't for another 2 years. Sure. Because they're not going to go and hear it in person.
When you say circularity, forgive me because I don't know, what does that mean?
Yeah, I mean, it's about making plastics part of a more circular economy, not just like taking fossil fuels, making a product, and then disposing of it, but making it circular, in other words.
Sure.
The Ellen MacArthur Foundation has a lot on this for anybody who's interested. But once you make a product, that the end of life becomes to recycle it and hopefully into the same product or something similar to that. Yeah, I don't. You get into a lot of the minutia of it, and it's hard to do because you can't always use recycled materials in things like food packaging. You can in some cases, but you can in everything. So I think that people, but I guess to bring up another story that was in the news recently, The Atlantic had a column that said plastics recycling is a myth, it's not working, and we should give up. And I think that's not true. Plastics recycling is underperforming. It hasn't been growing rapidly enough, to keep up with what brand owners are going to want. If you want to have a more circular economy, you're going to have to step up your recycling. And I think the biggest hurdle there is collection.
Right.
Most of the material's not being collected, and it's not being collected in an efficient way that plastics processors can use it.
Well, and I think part of that goes to the information going to the end user. I can speak for myself. I don't know what is collectible, what's not collectible, which bin it goes in, if I have to take the label off first, if I have to clean it. There's so many different things, and you just think plastic and you throw it in the recycling bin. Well,
right.
There's some things that can't be recycled. And so you just don't know. And I think part of it is educating a consumer and figuring out whose job is that? Is it the person that's putting the product out there is it their job to educate the consumer that says, hey, when you're done with this, throw this in a recycling thing? Or is it the people that are producing the plastic? Whose job is it, and how do we get better at it? Because I think most people want to recycle and do something, and they think they are, right? When they have their garbage can in their recycling bin, they think they're recycling. But in reality, it's not really doing much.
Yeah, you're right about that. Where I live, we got a 4-page flyer from our community saying sort of instructions on how to recycle, and then we were looking at a specific container, a PET clamshell, and my wife said, was this recyclable or not? I said, well, let's look at the 4-page flyer. We looked at it, and we couldn't figure it out. It's like, how could you not cover this in
right.
your 4-page flyer? But they did not. So it's like, well, and so my attitude was, well, don't, because they probably won't. They just want bottles. And her attitude was, let's put it in, and if they don't want it, then they'll throw it away. And I think that's the attitude that you're describing that the public has, that I don't really know what they'll take, so I'll just give them everything and then let them sort it out.
Or the flip side, like you said, this is not what they want, so I'm not going to give it to them, and then you just don't know. And so I think, like most things when we have problems, it's a lack of information, education, and communication. And whose job is that? And we've had a couple people on and talked about recycling, and it just seems like it's so far away still from being something that's going to be super useful. I mean, right now there is recycling, right? And people are using recycled materials, but it's so far from as efficient as it needs to be.
Yeah, it's definitely far from efficient, but it definitely needs to make progress really rapidly.
Yeah.
Or else we're going to see situations where, like, And a lot of people who are in packaging want to continue to use polypropylene, but if the government comes out and says, well, you can't call polypropylene a recycled material that has the ability to be recycled because not enough people have access to recycle it. So then if you can't put your margarine tub and your, all of those containers, there's a lot of them. If you can't put those in the recycling bin, then then legislators start to ban them. And that's a bad situation.
A friend of mine out in California, her name is Tina, she has started a company and patented a solution that she says can recycle any plastic material. And she's starting to get a little bit of publicity. They just did a video on it a little while ago. I don't remember the name of the company that she started for, but I mean, that's something that sounds really, really promising. And she was telling me people are fighting over the technology and wanting to be a part of it. And so hopefully that's something that can make some headway and actually make a difference.
Yeah, that sounds great. I remember I think there's sort of a tendency by people in the plastics industry, especially, to feel that some technology is going to save them.
Right.
That whether it's chemical recycling or the ability to make fuel from plastics or something is going to come along, and that'll be sort of a magic bullet that solves all of the waste problems. And technology can definitely play a role, and I think that there's some activity going on to make plastics easier to sort, to create streams that have more value. There's good things going on, but I think a lot of it comes down to changing our culture.
Yep.
So that we're no longer a culture of just use something and throw it away, or worse, use something and then throw it out your window as you're driving down the road. I hate walking my dog and seeing cups and lids and straws. It's like, why do people do this? Where do they think it's going to go?
We were in Greece probably 20 years ago, and I was amazed because people would just drive in the mountains and they didn't have garbage pickup because we were in the village, the Hodio. So they would take their garbage bags, they would drive into the mountains, just throw them out of their car while they were driving. And it's just like,
no,
it's everywhere, but they didn't, I was in shock, and my grandma could not understand why we were so weirded out by it. But that was just the reality. That's the reality of what they live.
But there's other cultures that do not have that attitude at all.
Right, absolutely.
You go to other countries where things are pristine. I think part of it is people aren't littering, or they're dealing with their trash effectively. And then part of it, I think, also is the communities actually invest in cleaning stuff up, because what's going to attract or give people the license to throw stuff out their window is if there's already litter that they see when they're driving by. So they might think, well, somebody's going to clean it up eventually, so I'll just add to it.
Jeremy Dworshak, he's over at 3M, a good friend of mine. He says, presently education of the consumer on recyclability of plastics falls on the community recycling coordinators. This is a big ask and takes a lot of resources that are typically not available in most areas. What do you think, Colleen Sinclair? Colleen, you're leaving us hanging here. What do you think?
Yeah, good question, Jeremy. Jeremy's a good guy. I think that he's right. I think that there's really been a big push to make. Definitely the community recycling coordinators have to have that message about what's recyclable, but I think they also want financial assistance from the plastics industry. There's really the whole, extended producer responsibility is a trend that we're seeing. There's debating in California right now. It's in New Jersey. It's been spreading around the country. I think we're going to see it spread to more places, and so that's going to mean industry paying for some of this.
Right.
But yeah, I don't think taking responsibility for the messaging. No, I don't think that they can do that. They could try to do it, but a lot of times it ends up as greenwashing. If you create a product and you say this is recyclable, and you put that on your label, but if it's not really recyclable, the Association of Plastic Recyclers is a big help on this. They've got a lot of resources. They do things where they can certify that something is recyclable. They work with recyclers. They make sure that if you're going to say something on a label or in your marketing about your product and recycling, then they can confirm it for you. So it's a good resource.
I'm sure it's a great resource. The problem is they probably have to charge for it, and so whatever that any certification costs a good chunk of change, and so now you're leaving it up to the producer of the product to say, yeah, we want to invest in that. We know it's recyclable. Why am I going to invest in this extra fee when my end user is not going to want to pay the extra money for me to recoup that extra fee? And it becomes that just, it's a different cyclical. It's a different circle problem that we run into.
Yeah, the whole thing with recouping is a little pet peeve of mine. A couple of months ago, there was a story, I think it was a Reuters story, that quoted somebody from a big brand owner who was complaining about the price of recycled plastics versus virgin plastics, and saying, like, well, recycled plastics cost a premium right now, and so we can't do it. And I was thinking, well, it's not that you can't, it's that you won't. But if you want, they were complaining about, there's not enough recycled material, something needs to be done, but then they want somebody else to solve the problem for them.
Right.
But the problem is, the solution is for demand to increase, and the only way to do that is for you to start using it. And some of the companies, they do already. Procter & Gamble, Clorox, they've been using recycled plastics for years. So again, when people say that plastics recycling doesn't work or it's a myth or whatever, I just say, hey, go down your supermarket aisle and look at your Tide bottles and your Clorox bottles, and they all contain post-consumer content, and they have for a long time.
Yep. So Frank Esposito is watching with us, our good friend. He says, how would bottle bills affect plastic recycling rates? Something tells me he already knows this answer, but he's teeing one up for us.
He is, yeah. In fact, I gave a talk at Penn State Erie Barron College a couple of weeks ago at their big Molden conference, and he asked the exact same question.
So you got an answer all teed up, ready to go. Let's hear it.
Yeah, it would help a lot. I mean, if you look at the recycling rates for plastics in bottle bill states versus non-bottle bill states, it's night and day. I think the bottle bill states recycling rate is something like 60%, and in the non-bottle bill states, it's much lower, probably below 20%. And that's just for PET, which is a material that we know has a value. We know it can be recycled. Everybody knows it can be recycled. And then even then, a lot of the deposits only apply to soft drink bottles.
Okay.
Some states are different. Some also include like juice bottles and tea bottles and things like that. But if you think about all of the PET containers that people use, water is number one. Water is the best. Water is past carbonated soft drinks. And so, look at what deposits could do, sort of expanding existing deposits in states that have them, and then also rolling them out to additional states. It would make a huge difference. And, I don't think the plastics industry is really opposed to that. I've been talking to blow molders for a long time, and they know that it would be good for them. It would,
Sure.
The people, the NAPCOR people, they support them now, but they haven't. But sort of who opposes them? It's really more, the grocery stores. They don't want to have to collect that. They don't want to have to manage that. And then the soft drink companies, which don't want to force their customers, who are the grocery stores, to deal with it. But I live in a bottle deposit state now in Michigan, and I think it works pretty well. I think whenever time I go to the grocery store, there's a line of people going in, returning bottles, and getting their deposits back. So you don't see those containers in litter very often, because they do have value. There is plenty of other litter in Michigan. It's not a perfect situation, but it's probably better than a lot of other places.
It just seems like if the reason not to have like a bottle buyback or a bottle bill is just because it's a hassle for grocery stores, that doesn't seem like a good enough reason. Especially because there's no guarantee that everybody's going to bring them back. But if 30% of the people bring them back, those are going to get filled really, really, really fast. And that's going to do something. So isn't it worth it to just
Yeah.
do something small.
Yeah, I would think so too. Plus, you're bringing people to your store who are getting money. You know, a lot of the way I've seen it work, like if you get a voucher and then you can go into the store and you can use that to buy groceries. That's probably a plus as well. So.
And you would think, especially now when everything is exponentially more expensive, that every little bit helps. Why wouldn't somebody do that? I mean, I remember I used to work at Jewel as a bagger and a cart pusher and everything, and we had like the bag returns, and we had we had to bring the plastic bags back, and then they would recycle them and make more plastic bags. And I don't really even see those anymore. But
a lot of them came out, during the pandemic. A lot of stores removed those, and
right.
I would maybe urge if you go to a grocery store and your store has not started doing that again, I would encourage them to do it, because that material does have value. I mean, Trex uses that. Other companies use it. Novalex, which makes a lot of the grocery bags, they use that material. So yeah, it has value, and it would be nice if they would start collecting it again. I think people were, definitely. I understand why. During the pandemic, people maybe didn't necessarily want to handle trash that you were touching and then putting in a bag or whatever. There were a lot of health concerns, but I think that's probably not a concern anymore.
For the most part, it's not a concern. I don't want to alienate anybody. For the most part, it's not a concern. There's possibly some more people out there that feel that way.
There were some studies done right at the beginning of the pandemic that said, like, like the COVID can live on a plastic surface for some long period of time, and I think people were worried about that. Like, well, if you didn't want to even touch anything, or they're putting on gloves in the store. And I think the later research has shown that it doesn't really live on surfaces for a long time. It's more of something that you can transmit by coughing on something.
So let's see. Harash Patel says PCR post-consumer resin versus PIR post-industrial resins. What are your thoughts on how it affects the circular economy market?
Yeah, I think that for the most part, there's nothing wrong with post-industrial recycling. It's existed for a long time. It's a well-established business. A lot of companies use that material. Usually it's for price reasons. It's not really for any kind of a sustainability reason. There's not a nice sustainability message, though, if you're using material that otherwise, scrap that would have ended up in a landfill. I think that, so maybe on the first point would be, if you're, let's say you're a plastics processor, or you're a thermoformer or an injection molder, and you've got this material that's scrap, and you have the opportunity to recycle it rather than to throw it away. I mean, that's great, and it's great for sustainability, and I think it also helps your carbon footprint. So those are all pluses. I don't think that it really solves, when it comes to circularity, it's not really making it more circular in a big way. I mean, post-consumer material is going to have a greater impact, but I guess I don't want to completely dismiss, what the post-industrial recyclers do, because it is very important. It does reduce carbon footprint of the industry.
I guess my biggest question, and I wish that we had more people on here that were just consumers or just getting that idea, or if Plastics News has ever done a poll. I know that consumers say that it's an important topic, the carbon footprint, global warming, all that stuff. Are they willing to pay more money? Are the consumers willing to pay a premium to have recycled materials being used, and would they be willing to invest their own money into making that happen?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't think that most would. Of course, there's some segment of the population that would, and there's some segment of the population that would prefer to use returnable, reusable, refillable packaging. And that there are people now who, if you're going to go to the store and you're going to buy coffee, you're going to take your container from home and fill it up and pay for it. There's stuff like that too. But I don't think that's the driver. I think that the driver is more going to be what investors want. There's a whole ESG going on now, where investors want to only invest in companies that are, good corporate stewards. Sometimes I think, like, how serious is this? I saw that there was but there were some shareholder initiatives that passed this year. I mean, there was one a major resin company where the majority of shareholders asked them to consider what their strategy of relying on producing virgin plastics is going to mean for the company in the long run. And I'm thinking, well, this is a universe of people who are already investing in this company.
Right.
It's not just environmentalists. It's not just people like that. It's institutional shareholders.
Yep.
It's colleges and universities and foundations. People who own a lot of stock who are saying, you need to take a look at this and talk and consider, whether this is sustainable in the long run for your company, or should you be looking to get out of it or looking to use materials that are somehow more sustainable or have lower carbon footprint. So that is a big part of it. And I think also legislatively, there's and when it comes to legislative matters, those things never go away. I remember the plastic bag ban in California. It was on the ballot. It was fought in the legislature for years. It was finally on the ballot. It used to be that every year at the end of the legislative session, there was this big flurry to try to get a bag ban passed. And at the last minute, it would be rejected. And then it would come back. And then it would go back and forth. And, I think sometimes it's because legislators like to have something controversial to get people riled up about and collect campaign donations. I said we weren't going to talk about politics, but that'll be my plastics and politics comment.
That's part of the life that we live in, though. Is that a lot of things, it doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on, there is money funding both sides, and there is money in causing a stir and a controversy and pitting one side against the other. It doesn't matter what it is and what side you fall on. That's just a sad reality of life. I joke about it sometimes that I'm not too old, but I'm not too young to remember that at one point people wanted to do away with all the paper bags and only use plastic bags because we had to save all the trees. Mm-hmm. And now you go to the grocery store and people say, is paper okay because we don't want to use plastic? And there's that circularity again. It all comes back around. So now this is important, and it depends on who's telling the story and what the narrative is at the time.
Yeah, I think on bags we're probably heading toward a future where everybody's going to be expected to use a canvas bag or reusable bag, and you're not going to get any kind of a free bag when you go to the grocery store, or if you get a bag, they're going to force you to pay for something that they consider reusable, pay a nickel for it.
And I think that's fine. Most people have reusable bags at this point. I mean, you get them at every trade show you go to. You don't even have to buy them. They just give you bags. Everybody's got bags to give away. You could never buy a bag again, and you would be okay. I'm sure of it. As long as we don't have another pandemic where they don't let you use those bags, then you're okay. But it's just the world, and we don't know what's going to be coming next. But right now, what we know is we have supply chain issues and we've got inflation issues.
Yeah, we definitely do. Inflation I think is going to be around for at least another year, maybe 2 more years. It's there's just too many factors that are impacting that. Including the Ukraine situation and energy prices being higher. Interest rates going up, and so that's going to increase the price of what people are paying for cars and houses. The things that you finance suddenly became a lot more expensive in the past 2 months. So I think that's, I think what the Fed is trying to cool off the economy, and that means destroying demand, and destroying demand means less stuff is going to be sold at some point, And I think a lot of people have cash in their pockets right now since the pandemic. A lot of people make more money. Boy, think about the average plastics processor definitely has probably raised their entry-level salary in the past couple of years, and in some cases raised it a lot in order to compete with, when I go around and talk to companies, and they all say well, there's an Amazon down the street now, so we had to raise our starting salary to $15 or $16 or some number
Right.
that they had to do, or else people were going to walk out the door.
And it's not even just the starting salary; it's what you have to do with all the remaining members of your team, because you may have had people that were working for you for a little while making that much money, and that was good for a little while. That was fine. That's a building block. That's a process. Somebody comes in, they're training, they don't know much, and they're making X amount. Well, now you have to bring somebody in if you want to have a chance of hiring them at, like you said, $15, $16, $17 an hour. What does that do for everybody else that's been working there for the last 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years? How much more do you have to pay that person now because they know what the starting rate is?
Yeah, it's gonna increase inflation. It's going to be inflationary, but it's also going to, I think, encourage more companies to continue to become lean. I mean, I think every one of our listeners who survived the Great Recession is probably very lean already, knows a lot about automation, knows a lot about like doing things the most effective way that they can. So I don't want it to come across like I don't know that. I definitely.
Oh no, of course.
I definitely know that, but I think it's just gonna have to become even to the greatest degree that they can to become as lean as they possibly can. And you see a lot of molders who are doing lights out third shifts now. I mean, it used to be pretty rare. And now I don't think that it's all that rare anymore. I think we're seeing a lot of that.
Yeah, you have to. I mean, you got to turn out the parts. You got to get them done, and it's the best way to do it. So, we are getting 52 minutes already. It goes so fast, Don. It's so much fun. It's so much fun. So I'm gonna ask you a couple of fun questions. Yeah. Who was the best boss you ever had, and what made them the best?
Okay, yeah. Since I'm a long-time listener, I know you're going to ask this question. So I've got a couple great bosses. One of my first boss at my first newspaper job, which was the Milwaukee Journal, I had a boss named Bob Beerwald, who was a great boss. And sort of it's hard to explain, but look at it this way: we were putting out a daily newspaper, and he was doing it mostly with a staff of part-time people, and so it would get to be sort of Thursday and Friday every week, and we were reporters and we were out doing stories every day, and then we're covering the city council meetings and school board meetings at night, and then it'd get to be Wednesday and Thursday, and you'd say, "Oh, I'm out of hours, I can't work anymore." But for Bob, we would all pitch in, and we would do, I basically, the other reporters would joke and say, "Oh, you're volunteering today," but yeah, I'm volunteering today because Bob needs a story to fill the page, and what's he going to do? He can't fill it with nothing. He needs news to fill it. And he was very encouraging. This was pre-email days, so he would like cut your story out of the newspaper and put it on a piece of paper and write a little note about what he liked about it and put it in your mailbox. And when you checked your mail, sometimes that'd be the only thing you'd find is a note from Bob saying, good job or whatever. So somebody who's encouraging, I like that. So.
Yeah, I was going to say, what was it about Bob that made him unique where you wanted to give your time? Not necessarily get paid for your time, but give your time. And it sounds like it's the same thing that people appreciate today. They kind of got lost in the middle section of actually appreciating people and giving encouragement that's genuine. He didn't do it to get more out of you. He did it because he actually appreciated who you were and what you were bringing to the table and how.
Right, and he had high expectations. You wanted to do good work. And he recognized it. He didn't. He's not going to put in a note for just everything you do. He's recognizing stories that are good. This is good journalism. This is something that's interesting, and you want to do more of that.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite quote or something that you live by?
I guess kind of just make the best of things. That's how I feel most of the time. Like things don't always go the way that you want them to go, but make the best of it.
Awesome. All right. So these are two from the heyday. This is like the original questions. If animals could talk, what would be the rudest and why?
Yeah, probably the typical answer would be cats, right? Because
cat is the number one answer.
Yeah.
I can't stress enough how much people think cats are rude, but they still have them, and I don't understand why. But that's number one.
my wife was house sitting for a neighbor, and they had a cat. And the entire week that they were gone, she never saw the cat. She cleaned up after the cat, she fed the cat, she watered the cat, but she never saw the cat. It's like, you jerk.
You can't even come out and say hello once in a while. So you have it, cats.
So now we're alienating cat people.
Yeah. And then my favorite question that I asked for a long time, and I stopped, but I'm going to bring it back because I think it speaks a lot about people. When you go to the bathroom and toilet paper is on the roll, should it come from the top or from the bottom?
I think it should come from the top, I guess, right? That's the way my mom did it, so that must be right.
That's the way I like it. I mean, I'm one of those people that actually changes the toilet paper if somebody does it wrong. Let's see. Frank Esposito says he was an old freshman, 22, I think. He had juniors, hockey. I don't know what that's talking about,
You're
Frank.
referring to something that we mentioned before. Can't think about it.
Maybe he'll clarify that for us because now I'm confused.
Yeah, come on, Frank.
Frank, are you listening to the same show?
He's got two podcasts going on right now.
Good for him if he can pull that off. That would be impressive.
Well, if anybody can do it, it would be Frank.
Yeah, I love that guy. He's a good guy. So we always end our show with a prayer. You know that. If anybody's listening and you have a prayer request, go ahead and put that in the chat, and we will get to it. Don, before we go, is there anything else that you want to cover or say or talk about?
I think we said up front like all the things that we could talk about, and we touched on very few of them, but I think we had a good conversation. So yeah, let's just encourage people to follow us on social media, and we'll keep the conversation going there.
Yeah, and at some point, if people have other questions that they'd like to know about, I would love to do this again with you and keep some plastics news things happening. Maybe we can do something that's regular and have you and Frank on at the same time. We could do that. We can have multiple people and just share news in a different way. And I think that would be great.
Thanks. Yeah, I think I managed to put this on the Plastics News LinkedIn page too. So maybe we'll get a little boost.
Don, did you have any prayer requests before we get out of here?
Yeah, well, I guess I mentioned my mom, so I think we should say a prayer for my mom. She hasn't been feeling well. She's 84 years old, and she could use a prayer.
You got it. All right, let's pray, and then we will get about our day. Heavenly Father, thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for the technology that you give us that allows us to communicate when we can't be together. And we just pray blessing over Don and his mom and his family, that his mother would start to feel healthy, and that you would bring quick healing to the situation. And we just pray for this entire industry in our country, and that we would be able to be good stewards of the land that you give us, and that we would be able to put an emphasis on recycling and taking care of our world and the people within it. And so we just ask that you would be with us, and that you would get all the glory through all of it. And it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Don, we made it in just under an hour. That's pretty impressive, I think.
Sounds good.
I know we had other topics to cover, but it's hard to just shift gears. I don't know how real journalists do this, where they have a time frame and they have things that they hit, and they don't do it in a way where it cuts anybody off. I like having just flowing, natural conversations and seeing where it goes.
That's the best way.
I think that's when you really get to know somebody. So, I appreciate you. Like I said before, I appreciate you stopping me when we were in Detroit, and the kind words, and just the fact that you've been in this industry for so long, and you continue to give your knowledge and your expertise and your voice to people that want to hear it and need to hear it. So thank you for everything that you do. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, Tony. I appreciate you as well. You said something to me in Detroit about where you'd like the podcast to go, and I said, I think you're already doing that. You're already really a nice resource for the industry to continue to improve, especially the North American industry. So, well done.
I appreciate that. Have a good one, my friend. Thanks for coming on. Hopefully we can talk soon.
Thanks, Tony. Thanks, Lorena, as well.
All right, everybody, that's a wrap on the show. I want to thank Don from Plastics News for joining us, for being part of the conversation, and Lorena and Frank and Harash Patel for his conversations and additions, and Jeremy and everybody that listened. Even if you didn't chime in, I appreciate it. My ask would be that you would like us, that you would, if you're watching this on YouTube, that you would click the like button, that you would hit subscribe, that you would help us to grow this channel and this show so that we can reach more people. We just had the conversation about recycling. Maybe we can help by instructing and telling people what recycling actually looks like. There's ways that we can make a difference as a show and as a group, but it takes all of us working together to make that happen. So if you know anybody that would like to hear the show, that would get anything out of the show, if it made you giggle a little bit, please share it. It's free. Just, throw a little thing on LinkedIn and say, hey, I watched this show and I thought it was kind of interesting. You might like it. And I would really, really, really appreciate it. And maybe we'll even do a giveaway for the person that shares it the most. I don't know how to do that or what it looks like, but we can figure something out. So please do that. And if you'd like to be a part of the show in any way, please send us an email at tony@alliancelasersales.com. And we'd love to have you on. We've got shows booked through August. We're going to be off next week. We'll be out of town, and then we'll be back for a week, and then we'll be gone again. And so Vanessa's looking at me like maybe we just are off all of July. Is that what it looks like? We'll have a schedule that comes out. How about that? We'll put something out, and you guys can see what we're doing. Too much time off in the month of July. So on behalf of myself and Don and Alliance and Plastics News and everyone else that participated, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Take care, and God bless.